you can keep it. A republic. But what is a republic? Because if you don't know what a republic is, how can you keep it? For the last couple years, our republic has been under attack like I have never seen before. In a republic, you elect your representative. And your representative is who passes the laws that govern you. Now, we have been used to the last 100 years these unelected bureaucrats using administrative procedures to deprive us of our American right to self-govern. But what has happened in the last couple years, under the guise of an emergency, the executive branch has given authority to unelected bureaucrats to govern you by guidance, which means there is no due process. That means there was no opportunity to be heard. It means you are being governed by people who are not accountable in an election to you. Under COVID, we have seen the CDC tell landlords, you can't kick somebody out of your property. Under COVID, we have seen unelected bureaucrats come up and say, your business is closed because you're not essential. But your business can be open because you are essential. Your flower shop must be closed. But don't worry, you can buy flowers for your wife at the local grocery store. Your restaurant is closed. But 10 feet away, Hollywood actors can eat outdoors because they are a part of the privileged class. This was not a law passed by your duly elected representative. It was a mandate passed by unelected bureaucrats who are not accountable to you in the polling booth. It doesn't matter if it was a bureaucrat under Donald Trump or a bureaucrat under Joe Biden. No bureaucrat has the authority to use the power of the government to tell a social media company, silence their speech. But that is what's happened in the last couple years. A complete and utter attack on your constitutional right. Freedom of speech. The right to have an independent thought and to express it is being silenced by unelected bureaucrats. The United States Senator that I am running against, during COVID, used his office as Secretary of State and your taxpayer dollars to silence those people who disagreed with how he was administrating California elections. He gave millions of your dollars to political operatives to search through your social media. And if you said something about the elections that those political operatives disagreed, they cajole the social media companies to silence your speech. Here in America, it is a fundamental principle that you have the right of self-governance. And that right of self-governance is only checked by laws passed by your duly elected representatives. And guess what? Neither Joe Biden nor Gavin Newsom is your duly elected representative. They are the executive branch. Now, our founders understood the difference between the representative branch and the executive branch. You guys all hear of a guy named Andrew Johnson, 17th President of the United States of America, took over after the death of Abraham Lincoln. You all know that he was impeached, don't you? But do you know why he was impeached? He was impeached because Congress passed a law. He, using his constitutional authority, vetoed that law. And using their authority under the Constitution of the United States of America, Congress overrode his veto. And you know what Andrew Johnson said? I don't care about your stinking little law. I am the executive branch, and I'm not going to enforce your law. And they said, you're not? Andrew Johnson, thou art impeached. And we had the first impeachment trial of a president of the United States because they understood that the executive branch did not have the authority to pick and choose which laws they were going to enforce. That is another problem that we have here in the United States of America right now. George Gascon is picking and choosing which laws he is going to enforce. He wasn't elected to choose the laws that he was going to enforce. He was elected to enforce the laws that our representatives put into office. Executives, under our constitutional framework of government, are not supposed to have the authority to pick and choose. Because when they have the authority to pick and choose, that means they have veto power over the laws that were passed by the people's representative. If the people's representative says that a theft of a car is a felony, and all the add-ons and 3 strikes and all that, that is the law that is supposed to be enforced. You're not supposed to go, well, I don't like that law. The problem we have in America, the problem we have in California, is that there are politicians and unelected bureaucrats who do not like the handcuffs that the United States Constitution has over them. They want to be dictators. They want to dictate to you how you live your life. They want to govern you by fear of crisis. We've all heard this last week. What was it? 2 weeks ago? 10 days ago? California, we're no longer going to sell gas vehicles. But this week, hey, if you own an electric vehicle, don't charge it. Guess what? I went down to a Tesla charging station in Pasadena. There wasn't an empty space. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, every single space was filled with a Tesla. They want to govern by crisis rather than lead by planning in the future. Maybe electric vehicles will be the thing in the future. But if that's the future that they want to do as elected representatives, and oh, by the way, this is not passed by the legislature. It's not even passed by the governor. You know who's making the rules that we have to be gas car free by 2035? Yeah. An unelected board of bureaucrats are making the decisions that don't only govern us, but I've heard recently 15 states have laws that say that they're following what our California EPA unelected bureaucrats are doing. Why those legislatures gave up their power, that's stupid. But it's un-Republican and it's un-American. But they want to lead us from crisis to crisis, from fear to fear. That is the current legislative bureaucrat agenda. If you want to say that we want to go to the place where we only have clean energy vehicles, great. You're the elected representatives, that's your plan, that's your agenda. Well, build out the infrastructure so that it can work. Make sure we have enough energy to charge these vehicles. But here's the deal. This has absolutely nothing to do with saving the environment. You know why I know this? Because they did not ban their private jets. They did not ban their private helicopters. They did not ban their private yachts. All significantly more polluters than your little vehicle. What they are trying to do is they are trying to drive you into the Stone Age. I hate to say this, but this is looking a lot like the capital city of the Hunger Games, where the elites have their planes, their jets, their big feasts. But you serfs, you're going to be riding your horse to work. But you know what? Under the Inflation Reduction Act, understand, I'm not a senator yet, but I actually studied every single page. And did you know millions of your dollars, millions, are going to study how cow farts damage the environment? But they don't think. If all of us are going to be riding our horses to work, and those parking garages have now become stables, there's going to be a lot of horses standing around, eating food, not getting their exercise. How do we know that horse farts aren't going to destroy our environment? As I said, this is political. It's unconstitutional. And what it is all designed is by leading from crisis to crisis, emergency to emergency, they are trying to destroy your fundamental, basic rights as an American to self-govern your life. Whether it is DAs attacking your safety and freedom. Whether it's the CDC saying that your kid has to be masked. It doesn't matter who's doing it. They hate the Constitution. During COVID, I was a part of over 30 lawsuits against bureaucrats who were they were abusing their power to deprive you of your right of self-governance. When they shut down your business, I sued. You know what happened? It did not matter which business I represented. About a week after I brought the lawsuit, the governor, the unelected bureaucrats, they would change the regulations enough that the business that I was representing all of a sudden no longer had a financial incentive to keep the lawsuit going. Because they were given enough accommodations that their industry was now allowed to operate. I can't tell you how many times I brought lawsuits that within 2 weeks of me bringing the lawsuit, the industries represented by that lawsuit all of a sudden magically had a lot less restrictions on them. When they shut down our beaches, I brought multiple lawsuits. And magically, all of a sudden, because they understood, well actually, because I understood the Constitution and laid it out in the complaint, all of a sudden they realized, ooh, we maybe don't have this authority to shut down the beaches, and let's find a face-saving way to let the beaches reopen again. They shut down the state capitol from you being able to express your First Amendment rights that the governor shouldn't have the authority to shut down our state. Guess when they reopened it? 45 days later when Black Lives Matter started their protest. All of a sudden it was okay, you can't stop their First Amendment rights, but stop your First Amendment right from going onto the Capitol steps and saying, Gavin Newsom, you don't have the authority to shut down my business. That's permissible government restriction. But let's not stop the Black Lives Matter movement. Churches. I was involved in 3 of the 5 cases that went up to the United States Supreme Court challenging Gavin Newsom's authority to shut down churches. Why did they go after the churches? If you remember back to the days of the bubonic plague, it was the pastors and priests who were the only ones staying in the community helping people. Because they understand that from our history of the United States Revolution, it was actually the pastors who galvanized the people to stand up for their God-given rights and to fight back against the kings. They understood that if they want a compliant people, you got to take away from them the leaders who are most likely to give them the backbone to fight against the government. And that's why they went after that pastor in San Jose and piled up over $3 million in fines because he refused to obey the unconstitutional orders. And that's why I'm happy to say that that pastor, the California Court of Appeals, one of the most liberal appeals courts in the state of California, looked at those sanctions given by the lower court and they said, wait a second. The United States Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional for Gavin Newsom to shut down churches. And then we had a district court judge that issued $300,000 of sanctions. it looks like we're going to have to reverse these $300,000 of sanctions. Now, the other $3 million that was put on by the County of Santa Clara, those are still going through the litigation process. But the Court of Appeals has already unwound what the court did. I'm very optimistic that they will also unwind what the county did. Schools. In fact, that's what I'm working on this weekend. It's probably, I hope, it's the last legal brief I ever have to write in my life because I'm going to get elected to the United States Senate here. But right now, I am submitting next week a brief to the United States Supreme Court regarding unelected bureaucrats shutting down your child's school under guidance at the exact same time that guidance said your child can be in that school as a day camp, or can be in that exact same building as a daycare center. And your kid could actually study in that classroom as long as there was not a certified teacher in the room. You read the guidance. Your kid could be in that classroom, could not be in that classroom if there's a certified teacher. But as long as it was a day camp or daycare, and it was not a certified teacher, that exact same classroom could be used. That is the case that I am taking to the United States Supreme Court, that we do not have the authority, these unelected bureaucrats do not have the authority to deprive us of our right of self-governance. The legal issue is a little bit more complex. It's not as fun and exciting as I make it sound. But they were governing us by guidance. Unelected bureaucrats. Sorry, you're unessential. But you are essential. And it wasn't being done by our representatives. A republic, if you can keep it. Guys, we have one of the best opportunities to fight for our republic in 2022. I'm not going to tell you that this is the most important election in your lifetime, because every politician has said that since the day I was born. And I'm sick and tired of politicians telling me that this is the most important election of your lifetime. Elections are your responsibility. They're not a privilege. And so every election is always important because the people who you elect are to represent you. Eric is trying to represent you at the local level as your city council. Burton is trying to represent you at the state level as your assemblyman. Wes and myself are trying to represent you at the federal level. We are running to be your representatives. And your choice in the voting booth is going to make a determination and can have a real impact. I'm going to tell you something that's going to be very controversial, and some of you are going to hate me. But my biggest concern right now with our elections in California is not voter fraud. My biggest concern with elections in California are the 5 million conservatives who think that their vote doesn't matter, so they no longer participate. We had the recall of Gavin Newsom. 2.4 million Republicans who had voted in 2020 had a ballot on their dining room table. I don't care whether you think you shouldn't vote that way or not, it doesn't matter. 2.4 million people who voted in the 2020 election had a ballot on their dining room table, and they threw it in the trash and never voted it. 2.4 million. I'm not even talking about the Hispanics who wanted Gavin gone. I'm not even talking about the gun owners. I'm not talking about the 75% of evangelical Christians who didn't vote. There were well over 5 million registered voters in the state of California who were registered to vote, knew it was their civic duty to vote, had a ballot on their dining room table, and they chose not to participate. Here's the deal. I'm not worried about anybody in this room not voting. If you're here on a Saturday morning on a 3-day holiday weekend, I'm not worried about you. But who I'm worried about is your neighbor. The person who goes to church with you. Your coworker. Those are the people that I'm worried about. Because, see, the media has determined, you know what? You can go to any of the 33 states that has a U.S. Senate election going on. And there is probably 5 to 100 times more coverage of the U.S. Senate race there than we have in the state of California, and we have the most media of any state in the union. We have more media, yet we have less coverage. Why is that? Well, other than the obvious answer that the media is nothing but the communication arm for the DNC, they understand that they don't elect the Democrats, don't elect the most persuadable individuals. Maxine Waters, Kamala Harris, even the guy I'm running against is terrible on TV. If they give these people the media platform, people go, why would I want to elect that person? But these people are in power because they follow marching orders of depriving you of your Republican form of government. Here's the deal. We have just a little over 2 months to go. Little over 2 months. Yeah, ballots go out in what? 35 days?
October 6th.
Yeah, so not even 35 days. Okay? We got to get our friends, our family, our neighbors to the polls to vote. You may not like this, but as soon as ballots drop, Burton, you got to fill out your ballot. Lick it, and you got to go to your neighbor. Burton Brink, running for assembly. I need your vote. Here's my ballot. You fill it out, give it to me, and I'll make sure it gets to the ROV. Go to your next neighbor. Your next neighbor. Burton has to do that. Wes has to do that. Eric needs to do it. Actually, all of us need to do that. We all need to ensure that our friends, our family, that they actually exercise their responsibility as an American and vote. Now, if they say, you know what, I'm going to vote on election day, okay. But I'm going to call you at 4 o'clock on election day and make sure you got to the polls to vote. Because your vote matters. But Mark, that's ballot harvesting. I don't like it. I don't like it either. But the fastest way to end ballot harvesting is to do a better job of it than they do. You know what? 2 years ago, we started having ballot collection boxes in churches. They got so freaked out about that they tried to start suing. They allow ballot harvesting because they think that they can do a better job of it than we can. The problem is, California has so many conservatives that if we actually thought we could win just by going out and getting our neighbors to vote, that would be enough to win. How do I know that? Ever hear of a guy named Ronnie, governor of this state? He probably spoke to this group, 50, 60 years ago. But you know what Ronnie did? They ran one of the best run ground games where they got Republicans out, knocking on people's doors and getting people to the polls. And at that point in time, 55% of the state's registered voters were Democrats. And he won by double digits because Republicans got out there and they voted. Guess what? We only have about 47% of the state population is Democrat. Independents typically vote 60-40 in favor of Democrats. But independents right now in the state of California are polling about 70-10 in favor of Republicans. We have an opportunity to change this state if you simply get your neighbor, your friends, your relatives to the polls to vote. Guys, my name is Mark Meuser. I'm running for United States Senate. And I'm out there fighting for we the people and your basic fundamental constitutional rights. I went to the courthouse and brought over 30 lawsuits fighting to protect your constitutional rights. And now I ask you, help me take my fight for your rights from the courthouse to the U.S. Capitol. Thank you very much.